Hi gang, welcome back to the Honoris Latina, the Honoris Latina ever. Today's topic is going to be about the indoctrination of liberalism in the public school system. Years ago, I got involved in politics through my son who was under an IEP for speech. That year, the services just mysteriously went away, so it prompted me to do some investigative work, only to realize that it wasn't in the budget to have a speech pathologist full-time. They cut her back to part-time, even though she traveled a long way, and she couldn't do it, so we didn't have a speech path that whole year. They canceled the IEPs, they reinstated them the next year for the money, and then they canceled them again so they didn't have to pay out for the services. Instead, they used the money to let the chamber group use our school buses for chamber events, and they funded a full sports program. They rezoned the school districts so that our kids were traveling clear across Oregon, and this happened in a very small town in Tillamook County, Oregon. Now, I went through a lot, and so did my kids, because when you file a due process on an IEP not being implemented, it leads to your other kids being scapegoated. And during that time, after I didn't make the school board, my daughter ended up on a PowerPoint presentation with the comments that pretty girls attract sex offenders and they invite evil into the community. PowerPoint was destroyed. No evidence proved, and nor did I get any help from the ACLU, teachers unions, or nobody cared about her rights. I switched her over to school districts in order for her not to be discriminated against. But the reality of it is that my other son, my oldest son, was very gifted in sports, and he won games. And playing time boiled down to who was favored and about winning. So you have certain kids that will get pitching time even if they suck because they're teachers' sons. They groom these kids from the time they're in elementary school to play certain coveted positions. The only kids that were receiving any help from grants or money from certain institutions to gain them access into scholarships into colleges were that of teachers' kids. The bottom line was that I lost school board by a margin of 19 votes. And during the time I was running, I was solicited by the superintendent saying it would really be nice to have a Hispanic woman on school board. But they pitted me against the Hispanic male who was already on board, appointed to that position. They had no intention of me winning, and even though I lost by a margin of 19 votes, he got on. He got on because he was highly educated and he was a college professor, but he was very liberal in his leanings. He was a god-awful college professor. I ended up dropping his class within a week because he made the statement that anybody of average intelligence could pass this college course. If not, you're either stupid or lazy. He talked about his trips abroad and what he did abroad, but he never covered the subject matter because that was something we were supposed to do on our own. He was the worst teacher ever. This is the guy who sat on school board. Needless to say, my eldest son got a full ride scholarship into Grinnell, played baseball, did very well. $50,000 a year school for 95 to 98% endowment, which is pretty good. My daughter ended up leaving that school and going somewhere else. She completed almost 2 years of college while she was in that other high school, but didn't receive any grant help. My youngest child, who was in the accident, didn't get any help because she was disabled, and because she won an award of money from the accident, they said she had too much money in her bank in order to help. So she is literally crippled, has no left hand, but no one could help her gain access to college. But nobody will employ a GIMP. Reality, liberals. My son, who was under an IEP, was denied services. The IEP was canceled and he flunked out of high school. This is our public education system, you guys. This boils down to who you know and your politics. Oregon was the only state that was investigated by the federal government, tipped off because they were funding $1 million for a program that was taking our boys in the community and having them learn a skill. The skill was making blimps for a blimp museum, child slave labor. But the reason why the grant money was pulled was because there was no girls in the class, and they were citing it was discriminating because there was no girls. And the ratio of guys to girls was like, it was all guys. So they withdrew that money. Again, I was scapegoated. If you think for a single minute that this public education system cares anything about your children and your kids, you are wrong. It boils down to money. And only the richest districts enable their kids to go online and take the AP courses. Only the richest districts allow your kids to excel beyond the norm. For the most part, we dummy down the norm so that the kids at the very low end can come up to the top. This is what Common Core is about. This is what Jeb Bush and the Republican Party are all about. And if you don't like it, we can have charter schools so that we can completely eliminate helping the special need kids, and we can have a school without rules. Both parties failed us. Our public school system is nothing but shit. And I say that in the nicest of ways because this is true not in just the rural community of Tillamook County, Oregon, but everywhere out there. I am so disgusted with what happened. My son came out to Florida on an IEP that was never honored. He was called lazy, and he failed out of a Florida school district as well. Nobody cared about William, but he's learning some great skills working with his father. And you know what? He's going to keep trying because you know what? He realizes that an education is not about a high school diploma, which is meaningless. It's about really being a lifelong learner, and he is smarter than most kids I know. Now, as a mother, it broke my heart that he felt like he was a failure. But really, the school failed him. They put him in classes that he had to repeat. He knew all this stuff already. He was in with troubled kids, and of course he acted out. I could even get through to the counselor because she never had an appointment available. And when I did get through, she said, "This is how it is. You're going to have to deal with it. Your son is just lazy." Never looked at his charts, never looked at his IEP, never looked at his past. We were just Puerto Rican trash. And of course, this was a Puerto Rican counselor that was counseling me, telling me my son was lazy. This was the Florida school system under Rick Scott. I am going to tell you right now that I have no faith in the public school system and no faith in our Republican Party, who tries to undermine it as the teachers' unions just being bad. Because what the reality is, it's politics getting involved with our kids being able to learn. On both sides, no one gives a shit about these kids. They're throwaway kids. You know, if we could put kids in a place where they can thrive at any level, whether they're up top or in the middle or at the bottom, and be able to meet them where they are, instead of putting them all in one box saying, you guys have to be all at this spot at a certain time, because you know what? Reality, not every kid is going to be at this place at a certain time. And to deny those kids that are up top for those who are at the bottom is wrong. And to basically, you know, take all your time and give it to the kids at the bottom, and some of those kids don't even know English, and you put them in a group that maybe they get 2 hours of ELL instruction with kids that are learning culture and learning Spanish, and they're completely fluent in both languages, at the expense of the kids that know nothing, that get the same amount of time or even less. And those kids are sitting in a class all day not getting anything. It's wrong. It's failing, and it's a type of socialism inside the school district. So, you know, the IEPs don't get honored. The funding doesn't get put in the right places. We were taking away the funding one year from the special ed kids and basically canceling the IEPs, and that never got addressed. And people are wondering why parents want to homeschool. Well, now homeschooling is bad because you have to be able to be at a certain place at a certain time, and you have to test, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and jump through all these requirements. Really, how smart do you have to be to teach a first and second grader how to read? really not that smart. I jumped my son, who didn't even know his ABCs, who was pronounced autistic, 4 grades in that year, and he was actually tested and was in the TAG program. And how did he lose so much ground when he hit middle school and high school? Oh, it's because we're going to make an example out of him. Because if somebody speaks out and files a due process because we're not giving certain services because we can't afford it, we're going to take it out on the kid, we're going to take it out on the parents, and that kind of stuff is wrong. You don't do that to kids. You don't put a girl's picture on a PowerPoint saying that she attracts evil into the area. This really happened. Call me crazy, call me whatever you want, but I'm a mother of 4 kids, and they all are beyond the high school system, and thank God, because I would not want to be a parent having to send my kids in a public school nowadays. And you know, it is sad that this happens to families. It's sad that people have no recourse on this, and it's sad that our school board covered it up. Very sad. And I want to put it out there because, you know what, we're sitting there promoting Planned Parenthood and giving kids that are like 12 and 13 years old condoms, and actually giving them a gift certificate for $25 to go and get tested for AIDS and whatever diseases, and at the same time encouraging them to have sexual intercourse. But we don't have the money to have a reading program for kids who desperately need that extra help to learn how to read, to even be at grade level. And yet we can transport a team of football players all over a state just because we want to rezone the leagues to make those kids better. And that is completely not what the public school system should be about. It should be about learning. That's all. I said my piece. You guys have a great day. Bye.